Hi, everybody. We'll give it a minute or so to let people trickle in.
Mhm. Thank you all for your patience. All right, let's start. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another AMA. That stands for Ask Me Anything, in case you don't know. We're going to begin shortly, but before we do take notice of the text channel that's just above us here. It's called AMA-questions. That's where we'll be taking in your questions. Just bear with us. The channel is not opened yet. Before we do, we'll start with a little introduction of each step that will be answering those questions, so you know who you'll be listening to. I'll let them introduce themselves so you recognize the voices. And yeah, let's start with Elliot.
Hi, everybody. Y'all probably know me. I'm Elliot. I'm the game director for Shipbreaker.
Next, hi, I'm Vithi. I'm a game and UX designer on Shipbreaker.
Hey everyone, I'm Jason. I'm a game designer on Shipbreaker.
And I'm Ian. I'm one of the producers on the project.
And I'm Tina, the community manager. And now the questions channel is open, so feel free to post your questions and we'll start shifting through them.
Well, guys, getting in here early. What's the purpose of the new ship?
Ooh. We don't want to spoil too much of that. There's going to be some stuff coming out in the reveal. You guys have probably seen the advent calendar style reveal of the ship. So it's coming soon. We don't want to spoil too much of it. We want to let you guys discover that ship. So it's cool. I tell you that much.
I'm going to piggyback off his question. Can you give us some context about sort of where the ship fits into the game? That might not be as much of a spoiler.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it fits in. We were primarily looking at finding a ship that would fill the gap, the sort of like complexity and scale gap between mackerels and javelins. So it sort of starts in that range, and then it also sort of grows in complexity from there. So that's kind of where it lands. I see a question there. Why are mackerel cockpits so much hell to cut up? And the answer is that's the very first ship we designed, and we didn't know what we were doing when we designed it. You can tell the other ships have much better cockpits, and one of the things we would love to do at some point is go back and refit the mackerel noses and cockpits to be a lot easier to extract. That also drives us nuts.
Our good friend Goff asks, what would we like to fix with the UI?
Oh, that's a good question for Vitti.
So I can take that one. I mean, personally, having worked on it, I have so many gripes. When you work on something, you can kind of see every mistake in just really exaggerated detail. So everything from some of the readability concerns that have come up time and time again to kind of making the flows a little bit easier, especially when it comes to upgrading your equipment or even kind of navigating through the ship selection. I'd say those would be some of the primary things that I want to address. And I think that's like the bigger work. And then I think there's a lot of granular details or changes that I would personally like to make across all the screens. In terms of when we'd get to do them, I mean, there's development is obviously difficult and a lot of limited time. So we're going to try and address as many of our concerns as possible, or our wish list items as possible, but maybe not all. Yeah.
One little game dev secret I will let you in on is that UI is always has a lot of scope associated with it. So even though you think a change might be simple, if it involves UI, it's actually a lot more complicated than you might expect. I'm going to butcher this name. Callie Kane asks if there will be any new save resets, so any progression resets planned for the future.
Yeah, good question. And we know that the save resets are obviously never ideal to go through. We plan on only doing one more when we hit full release, so when we leave early access. So hopefully we will only experience one more.
And that will coincide with the release of Act 3, is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Awesome.
Cerelia's asking, what questions were you hoping to get today?
Meta question.
Mhm.
I think the UI one was great. I wonder if Jace, what's your biggest gripe with the game that you would like to change?
Biggest gripe would probably be adding more puzzles, and especially more puzzles with the elemental system. I would love if we could have had the time to go in and really dive deep into that, and really like use as much as possible. I feel like we've got a good base, but we could expand that a lot further.
Nice work.
My favorite question, which hasn't been asked yet, is of course, who's your favorite producer?
Jessica.
And that's going to be my answer. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. It's mean.
Poppy Sowie, I believe that's how you pronounce it, asks how expensive is mod support to be expected on final release?
How expansive is mod support? Yeah, mod support. That's one of the things that we unfortunately, as much as we would love to do mod support, the game just sort of architecturally on the data side isn't set up for it, and it would take quite a bit of effort to re-architect it in a way that would allow mod support. So unfortunately, it's not going to be any better than it is currently. And I know it's basically you can't do anything. I know Toph has done some amazing stuff with our game, but it takes some particular skills to do that. So maybe Lynx 2 will have much more integration with mod support from the beginning, but that's something that we just couldn't achieve with this one.
Jimmy Mick asks whether we will find out why there are so many seemingly space-worthy wrecks and what happened to their crews.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's something that we don't address in the lore necessarily, but essentially they're not like abandoned ships or anything. They're just civilization has expanded. It's been 300 years since humanity has basically gone out and colonized Mars and started to colonize Jupiter, and there's just several generations of ships now. And these are just the ones you're breaking down, the ones that are just no longer in service, essentially. So it's not like there was any great catastrophe or anything like that. It's just these ships have all been retired. There's newer ones that are actually out there flying. So it's kind of just like our modern sort of shipbreaking industries where things have just reached the end of their life cycle.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there are a couple narrative logs that sort of hint at some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a couple, and I think Weaver also mentions that, for instance, the mackerels are all decommissioned, and that's why you've got lots of mackerels.
In my headcanon, a lot of the ships you're salvaging are just like not capable of railgate travel.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a big reason.
Officially canonized, but to me, they have like microfractures or something that would cause them to explode if you tried to fire them through a railgate. There's a couple questions about console release. I'll just touch on that quickly. We're currently focused on getting the PC 1.0 release out the door, and after that's done, then we will be pivoting to look at our console release.
There's a question from Perkos. Is there going to be more lore with ghost ships?
Oh yeah, good question. I can tell you that there is at least one data drive in the new ships that talks about the ghost ships. So check it out.
And DWM asks, can we expect more plushie collectibles? Like the bunny?
Mm-hmm. We would love to do more plushie collectibles. We have some ideas for more to do. We'll see where they land in terms of production schedule, but there's definitely some ideas we have. We would love to add more of them.
Tangentially related, we did have a poster contest recently, and there will be a Bunny D movie poster that will be collectible in game. So, sort of, would be another answer. Oh, this is a good one. Freaklord asks, will you release a checklist for posters? I would like to collect them. Also the same for audio logs.
Great question. Yeah, that's something I'm going to actually pass this to Vidi because this is something that we've talked about as a UI thing that we might want to add at some point.
Yeah, I mean, something like a checklist or wanting to kind of complete everything. Like, there's different ways of addressing that, like potentially through stickers or awards. But I think this could be a pretty interesting way to incentivize players to add more. I wonder, though, from Lynx's perspective, do they want you to go and collect every poster, right? Or steal things from ships?
Point.
That is an excellent point. Cerilia asks, how long has this new ship been in the works?
Oh man, ages. It takes a really long time for us to design a ship, or even just like come up with the idea for what the identity of the ship is, prototype it, playtest the gameplay scenarios that we want to do on it, get together with the art team and make sure that all the pieces connect and it looks cool and the paint job is good and et cetera, et cetera. It's a very long process. So we've been actually working on this for, I don't know, 4 months, 5 months, Ian?
I think even longer. Like if you go back, we started talking about sort of the role and the spec, and it went through several iterations, almost as long as a year ago.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like last December, we were already talking about what we wanted to do for this ship. We had a lot of stuff to do between then and now, so the ship was not like actively worked on that entire time, but we've been talking about it for a very long time.
Here's an interesting one from Crazy Ace King. It's been mentioned that the voices in-game are placeholders and they'll be replaced at some point. Does that include Weaver? Personally hoping not. His voice is quite fitting.
Oh yeah, totally. That's been a hard decision, and we've agonized over whether we want to replace Weaver's voice or not. Of all the placeholder voices, obviously Trey, who was the game director originally on Shipbreaker, did an incredible job with the Weaver role. And that's what we've all come to know and love as Weaver. I will say that the plan is to replace him, and then I actually have just been in some recording sessions recently with all of the new voiceover actors, and the person that's doing Weaver is phenomenal. So as much as it will take time for us to all, not hear Trey as the Weaver voice, the new actor is just unbelievably good. So I'm hoping that you'll all like what he brings too.
I can second that opinion. I heard a clip today of one of the recordings, and I've loved Trey as Weaver since back in the early access release, and he was always like just Weaver for me. But I heard like 90-second clip of the new voice actor and instantly fell in love. I think it's going to be amazing. I think everyone's going to be super happy. Any update on the ship saving situation? Asks Jake T. King.
Yeah, it's ongoing. I think we've talked a couple times that it has not been easy for us to figure out how to save ships that are mid-salvage, but it is coming along and it is on track. I think to go in with the full release of the game, it'll be there. So it's getting there.
By ZJDH, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. Will there be a new hazard level?
Oh, Jace, do you want to answer that?
I don't believe in the next release we have a new hazard level, but we're not necessarily thinking of adding any more, but more so going back to the existing ones we have and looking at how we can differentiate them more, especially across all the ship types, and really hone in on making each feel a worthwhile jump.
Here's a question for me, or actually maybe it's a better question for everyone else. DWM asks, this is probably a really daft question, but what does a producer do?
Producers, they look through all of the questions in the AMA chat channel and they read them aloud.
They tell us we can't have more plushies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they make my life a whole lot easier, and then they crush all my hopes and dreams whenever I suggest cool UI changes.
So that's probably a better answer than I could have provided. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Are there any plans to add more equipment by ludicrous speed?
By the what? Sorry.
Oh no, that was the name of the person who
Oh.
asked.
Not for full release. I see there are a couple questions too about whether 1.0 is essentially the end of the game or not. That's sort of TBD, depending on how the game does and etc. Like we've got lots of plans for how we want to do live support and continue to upgrade the game and continue to add content to it. And we have some ideas for new pieces of equipment that we would love to do either as DLC or as updates to the game. So there's stuff we'd love to do there in between now and full release. I don't think there's any plans to add anything.
Guy asks, Shipbreaker 2, is that an announcement?
Is it an announcement?
Yeah, you mentioned Shipbreaker 2, that we might do modding support in Shipbreaker 2.
No, it's not an announcement. I'm just saying if Shipbreaker 2 became a thing, that would be one of the very first things. That would be one of the foundational aspects of that game, I think, is mod support.
Follow up on that, are there any plans to add co-op functionality from Cyber Squeegee?
Again, not for this release, but Links 2 would be that'd be another thing that we would from the ground up try to build it towards.
By Guy again. After this new ship, are there any more planned when Act 3 or 1.0 releases? Will that be the game feature complete?
Yeah, so that's the other one. That's the question I was kind of looking at when I was saying there are lots of things we want to do post full release. So we'll see what happens there. There's no other ships planned beyond this one for full release, but then we'll see what comes after that.
Are there plans to add bodies or creatures to the ships?
Oh man, that's a good question. We have talked a lot about having floaty bodies. We even talked a lot about your body staying behind when you die and you having to deal with it when your clone comes back, which would be awesome and hilarious. But unfortunately out of scope for us is we don't have a great deal of character modelers or character riggers, etc. on our team. So that's something that's tough for us to do, and one that we decided to stay away from. Also partially just for rating reasons. Dead bodies and stuff would have made our age rating go higher, so we've decided to just sort of stay away from it.
Bubby from the IT department asks, are there any hidden Easter eggs no one has found yet?
I think there are. Jason, Vinny, are you guys aware of any that have not been discovered yet?
I'm not sure about more hidden ones. I think there's a few around. A lot of the more recent ones I know got found, but I think there's still a few sticking around somewhere.
Richard and Ian have spoken up in the chat and said that they're aware of one. I'm also aware of one. We're probably thinking the same one.
Yeah, I think there's an audio related one that has been in there since day one that no one has found yet.
That one's super sneaky.
Yeah.
I think members of the team, including myself, who haven't found the audio one.
Will we ever be able to cut in different locales, i.e. different planets, Mars, Jupiter, etc.?
That is exactly one of the things that we're talking about for post-launch content or DLC.
Chant National, the individual who won the poster art contest with the Bunny D, is asking, Bunny D animated series when?
Oh yeah, nice work on that poster, by the way. That was fantastic. Yeah, I would love to see that. I'd love to write for that, and I would love to see it.
I guess it just all depends on how many copies we sell day one.
Yeah, exactly.
So, get the word out there, make it happen. Uh,
By
go ahead.
Amp Monkey asks, I know the prime focus is obviously breaking ships, but has there been any plans or research into possibly having repair contracts? You mentioned microfractures, perhaps having to perform non-destructible scans and repairing sections?
Yeah, 100%. That came up a lot early in development when we were discussing like brainstorming game mechanics and stuff for the game. Having you not just take things apart but also repair them, it totally makes sense, and a lot of it would be relatively easy extensions of a lot of the other existing mechanics that we have. But what we decided early on was just because we're such a small team, we really just wanted to focus in on one aspect of the game, which was the ship breaking part, and thus not spend too much time thinking about repairing or shipbuilding or anything like that. So that's again something that we would probably see either in DLC or in a potential links to.
Torf asks, what kind of tooling is there internally for creating ships? I'm curious if you have to manually move stuff around and add all the relevant tags, or if you've automated parts of the process.
Oh, I wish Richard were here to talk about that. He's in the chat, but he's Richard is our tech director, and he's been on the project since day one. And R.I.P. Richard, we've basically killed him. It's sort of a mix of many things. It's a mix of hand placing scenes. Objects and stuff, and then those also get fed into a sort of visual scripting based spatial procedural tool that also has a bunch of rules fed into it, like ship type and ship theme and number of things it can spawn, etc. And all of it is we've done a great job internally to build these things, but they're just not at the level that we can publicly share them out. Mostly because they don't work without a full version of Unity as well. So that is our ship pipeline. It's quite intense. One thing as just a quick anecdote about shipbuilding. Right now, it's an automated process that glues all of the ship pieces together, but that used to be a manual process. So when we were making ships, all of the designers would have to basically take each object, each panel on the ship, and like paint a strip of glue on one side, and then attach it to another object, and have to do that for all like 2,000 objects. And that was a nightmare. And then Richard, genius, made a automated way to do that. Otherwise, we would not have this game.
Okay, so I'm going to take half of Goff's question. We've already talked a little bit about the biggest gripes. What's your biggest triumph while working on the game?
Ooh, I'll let Jason Vitti answer that.
Biggest triumph. I don't know. Probably for the first one for me, I really like the salvage indicator, the new bar that we have at the top. That switch from the work order to that was one that I really enjoyed. Probably one of my favorite elements that we added.
Jimmy Mick is asking, are you hiring entry-level coders? We don't have any code positions open on our team, but the studio is growing rapidly and we're always hiring and we're always looking for software engineers. So definitely keep an eye on our career board and the careers part of our website. And yeah, chances are at some point in the future we will be.
Jimmy also asked, how many times has Lou paid off her debt? Been released, then cloned again with new fees.
Good question. I guess you'll have to wait until Act 3 to find out.
In the future, can we expect there to be space weather that may have an effect on gameplay?
Yeah, totally. Space weather and things like solar flares and stuff is another one of the things we're talking about for post-launch or DLC. So maybe.
By sleepless night, just for the sake of those of us who create Shipbreaker content, how much of a heads up can we expect before the main release for console release? I don't
The
know if we
main
can.
console release or the main or 1.0 release?
Both the 1.0 release and then the console release.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely be giving like several months heads up. We're not going to just spring it on you.
We only have a few minutes left, so if you have any questions that you want to ask, now is your time to stick them in the chat. Ruby asked, have we made an announcement on the release of the next act?
No announcement yet, but I imagine we will give an announcement on that shortly after this next update goes live.
Yeah, we can say that the next act is not coming in the next update. It is in a future update.
Oh, I saw someone had a question about boss ships or like super hard ships, and I'll say that is something we've discussed. We don't have any plans for that for Act 3, but we do have plans for something kind of like a boss fight for for the finale of the game. So I won't say too much more about that. We are currently working on Act 3 stuff, and that is part of it. So that should be fun and exciting.
Opinions on merch in the future.
Yes.
We have opinions. We won't talk about them, but we have them. Perfect. Do upcoming games like Starfield affect your game decisions?
Not really. We definitely are interested whenever we see games like that, or the games that are sort of in a similar space as ours. But at the same time, we've kind of got I think, our little niche in terms of tone and the game mechanics and the game loop, etc. That I think Starfield looks cool, but it's definitely way more open ended and way more granular than what we do, and that's cool. That's their thing, and we're not super concerned about overlap there. I think we're pretty confident in the thing that we're building.
Here's a technical question that, again, is more of a Richard thing, but maybe you can speak to it, Elliot. Does the state of Unity's ECS hugely affect the game's development, or are y'all moving in your own direction right now?
Oh, huge. Yeah, the game would barely be performant without ECS. So we're currently leveraging that system, and it's been extremely helpful for us to actually make this game with 1,000 ship pieces flying around actually run. I won't say it's been easy, and I think Richard would say maybe the Unity ECS system isn't the easiest thing in the world to use, but it's been great in the long run.
And we'll do one final question here from Bubby. Any hints on the Advent calendar ship that you can legally give?
That we can legally give?
Yes, legally.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so.
Sorry, all hints are illegal.
Yeah.
Okay. One last question from Clean Towels. What sort of big development milestones do you feel need to be completed before you can look to add new things?
Interesting. Yeah, I think the next huge thing for us outside of this ship going in is the Act 3 of the campaign. That's like the next big milestone, and then after that, I think we really just want to go and tidy everything up that's there. Things like the elemental system and how that stuff works, and the ships, and making sure there's no more bugs in them. Someone mentioned the salvage runner being a disaster. Yes, we're aware that's one of the ones we want to go fix. So I think that we would maybe try to stabilize everything that's there before starting to add more.
Awesome. Well, we will let you all get back to work. Tina and I will hang around and answer some of the questions that came up that we weren't able to answer here. But thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Cool. So if you have any sort of more generic questions for Tina and I, or if there's things in the chat that we missed, that we didn't get to, feel free to ask again, and we will do our best to answer them.